Hello, my name is Alex Johnson, and I'll be doing a short presentation on the policies to deal with mountain erosion, the case of the Mournes. The Mournes are a mountain range in the southeast corner of Northern Ireland. They are located within the Mourne area of outstanding natural beauty, which covers approximately 570 km square. The Mournes bound three district councils, namely Newry and Mourne, Down District Council and Banbridge District Council. The Mournes are the highest mountain range in Northern Ireland, but unique in the sense they are very densely compacted, stretching only 24 km from their start in Newcastle to their end in Restrepo. The Mournes are one of the most highly celebrated landscapes in Northern Ireland, renowned for their vast wealth of natural heritage. The Mournes are also home to a significant range of habitats, including some of Europe's most important tracts of upland heath, mountain heath and blanket bog. These are recognised through a series of national and international designations, including ASSI sites, SACs, Ramsar sites, and sites of local nature conservation interest. The Mournes provide a range of ecosystem services, as well as catering towards a number of land uses across their area. These include agriculture, forestry, water catchment, mineral extraction, carbon sequestration, tourism, and recreation. Recreation in particular is one of the most prevalent activities that occurs in the Mournes. The upland portion of the Mournes, otherwise known as the Eastern Mournes ASSI, is one of the most highly visited areas for recreation across the whole island of Ireland. An estimated 1.3 million people visit the Mourne AONB area every single year. Given the range of services that the Mournes provide, there has been increasing concern about the associated impacts of these activities, both currently and in the future in the Mournes. There are a number of activities which put pressure on the land. These include overgrazing, wildfires, antisocial behaviour and improper vehicle use. However, there has been mounting concern recently about the issue of unsustainable tourism and its link with upland erosion in the Mournes. Many of the issues relating to upland erosion in the Mournes, particularly those relating to upland path erosion, can be sourced from a number of different restrictions. Much of upland Mourne is privately owned, both by farmers and by trustees. The trustees gained the rights to the land as a result of archaic deeds passed down through generations. This means that most user access into upland Mourne is on a de facto basis. The few key access routes that do exist are not based on recreational routes, but on old quarrying and old farming routes. This means that the large volume of visitors that visit upland Mourne are restricted to what are in essence large social trail networks. The lack of underlying path structures on these social trail networks means that the landscape is vulnerable to erosion. Potential for erosion is highest on those paths which typically have the largest volume of visitors. These paths are usually located in what are considered honeypot sites. One such honeypot site, the Hur's Gap, is one of the main thoroughfares into the upland portion of the Mournes. A pedestrian counter was placed at the stile at this site, and in 1 year, spanning 2007 to 2008, 43,045 people were recorded crossing this one point into the upland portion of the hills. In the next year, between 2008 and 2009, 44,014 people were recorded crossing this same point. De facto trails can simply not sustainably accommodate this level of traffic, and this problem will only get worse in the future. It is perhaps no surprise that such high volumes of recreational activity exert significant pressure onto the land. The thousands of pairs of feet engaged in recreational activity leads to the trampling of sensitive habitats that make up the upland portion of the hills. This can also lead to removal of vegetation and the exposure of the soil substrate to further erosion by wind and rain. Not only does this have a primary effect on biodiversity, but it leads to a number of secondary effects on land uses within the upland portion of the Mournes, such as water catchment, grazing, agriculture, and carbon sequestration. This erosion of the Mourne uplands and the problems associated with it will only worsen and spread if current trends of recreational activity will continue to rise. With the increasing potential for upland erosion in the Mournes, coupled with the projected growth of recreational activity over the next number of years, it was clear that a strict management response was needed to alleviate this issue. Erosion control efforts have been ongoing since the 1990s. However, it wasn't until 2012 that a strategy against the issue of upland erosion, and in particular path erosion, was addressed as part of a specific management strategy. This was the Mourne Upland Path Project, and it was incorporated as part of the Mourne Mountain Landscape Partnership Scheme. The Mourne Upland Path Project is a project that's in direct response to the issue of erosion in upland Mourne. It is to be carried out by the Mourne Heritage Trust, the acting authority on issues of natural heritage across the Mourne area of outstanding natural beauty. The aims of this project are to mitigate erosion across the Eastern Mourne ASSI and to promote sustainable techniques of landscape management. An objective of this project is to repair existing paths in a sustainable manner. This will help accommodate for current and future levels of recreational use. It will also help prevent damage to the upland habitats that characterise the Mournes and will also allow existing habitats to regenerate. Another objective of this project is to profile sustainable techniques to land user groups, such as farmers and trustees. This project targets three of the main thoroughfares throughout upland Mourne: the Brandy Pad, the Carrick Little Track and the Sleeve Binion Track. There are a number of policies and legislations relevant to the Mournes that help address the issue of upland erosion and its associated effects. The erosion strategy portion of the Mourne Mountain Landscape Partnership Scheme stemmed from recommendations came over a 10-year period. These recommendations came to stakeholders such as landowners, farmers, councils, and above all the Mourne Heritage Trust. One such recommendation came from Queen's University Belfast. In their Mourne Mountain Footpath Condition Survey, they identified several sites within the Eastern Mournes ASSI SAC as being critically eroded. NIEA then conducted the Eastern Mournes ASSI Condition Assessment. This identified recreational use as having a significant impact on the upland heath and grassland communities of the Mournes. They recommended that management must be carried out to mitigate this impact. Other less direct recommendations came from the Mourne AONB Management Plan, the Mourne Biodiversity Action Plan, the Mourne AONB Access Study of 2008, and the NI Outdoor Events Guidelines 2010. Whilst many of the aforementioned policies were largely local and regional, it wasn't until the introduction of a national policy that action against upland erosion in the Mournes and its associated impacts really began to be addressed. This national policy was the 2011 Wildlife and Environment Act for Northern Ireland. It was the first major piece of legislation to formally induce action against unsustainable tourism and the potential damaging effects of path erosion. Particularly relevant to Mournes was the new biodiversity duty on public bodies. This states that it is the duty of every public body, in exercising any functions, to further the conservation of biodiversity so far as is consistent with the proper exercise of those functions. When detailing what conserving biodiversity includes, legislation states that it is in relation to any species of flora or fauna, restoring or enhancing population of that species, or in relation to any type of habitat, restoring or enhancing that habitat. This particular national policy was a driving force in the establishment of the Mourne Upland Path Project, part of the Mourne Mountains Landscape Partnership Scheme. Following the introduction of such a policy, there are always a number of challenges that must be addressed before the requirements can be met. In the case of the Mournes, one of the most prevalent issues is establishing where the responsibility lies in terms of management. The Mournes, like many other treasured landscapes across Northern Ireland, are made up of numerous stakeholders, which results in complex landowner and responsibility issues. However, the Mourne Heritage Trust are the acting authority on the management of natural heritage as well as conservation across the Mourne area of outstanding natural beauty. In the case of this particular policy, the Mourne Heritage Trust will conduct management in liaison with stakeholders such as landowners, trustees, NI Water, NIEA and other authorities. Another challenge of the management response to policies is to balance on one hand a requirement for better access and better management in upland Mourne, but on the other hand a desire for less management and less interference to preserve the wildness of the Mourne experience. There are a number of beneficiaries to the policies that aim to mitigate upland erosion and upland path erosion in the Mourne Mountains. One such beneficiary is the recreational user. The Mourne Upland Path Project will provide new demarcated paths, improving infrastructure in upland Mourne and perhaps encouraging more people and a wider variety of recreational users to engage in the mountains. This could improve people's quality of life through health benefits and help engage people in the local landscape. Local businesses could also potentially benefit from the management responses to upland erosion policy. The new path structures can accommodate for more visitors, and therefore potentially more visitors could be encouraged, thus supporting the local tourism industry. Farmers are also potential beneficiaries. Properly demarcated trails restrict recreational users to a definitive path. This removes the desire to stray onto vulnerable land and habitats. This reduces the risk of erosion and maintains the quality of land for grazing. Landowners and trustees could also potentially benefit from this policy. This is because, as a result of the new management on paths, public infringement on land is focalised, which helps minimise the potential for land boundary disturbances littering across the site and other such issues. Also, measures to reduce erosion can help reduce the potential for deposition of runoff in the water catchments. This is of benefit to landowners such as NI Water who want to maintain an optimum water quality. The policies are also of benefit to conservationists and natural heritage groups. This is because recreational users are restricted to only small portions of the site, which helps minimise the impact on the rest of the environment. This helps contain the precious habitats of upland Mourne and thus contributes to biodiversity. As well, measures to reduce erosion can also reduce the potential for invasive species colonisation, such as rhododendron ponticum. This also is of benefit to biodiversity. Whilst environmental policy can be of enormous benefit, they aren't without their shortcomings. These shortcomings can manifest as conflict in places such as the Mournes. One area in which conflict may arise is between land users and recreational users. This is because new path structures make the Mournes more accessible to a wider variety of users. Some newer, less environmentally aware users may be more susceptible to instances of littering, boundary damage, and livestock disturbances. They may not also adhere to the path structures, leading to the same habitat loss and erosion problems as before. This would of course be of concern to landowners, such as farmers and trustees. Conflict can also arise between recreational users. Some recreational users feel that the construction of new path networks in upland moors detracts from the wildness of the area, whereas others feel that it gives more people the opportunity to go up and enjoy the moors. There are also combined concerns across the board that increased accessibility to the uplands could potentially devalue the landscape as well as its habitats, affecting the core business of land use. One can draw many conclusions from studying the policies that deal with mountain erosion in the Mournes. By spending any time looking into the subject, it becomes extremely clear that the issue of upland erosion is a pressing one and is only going to become more significant with time. Another thing one notices is that management is necessary to combat this problem, as well as its associated effects. Erosion does not just impact upon biodiversity, but has a number of secondary effects which can lead to problems for land users. One of the more prevalent issues when it came to the enforcement of policy in the Mournes is determining who's responsible for what. It's difficult to determine who the responsibility of management falls down to, due to the complex land ownership patterns in the Mournes. The issue of management itself is a complex one, due to the sensitivity and variety of habitats, as well as the variety of audiences that management must cater to. Another conclusion one can draw is that formal policy and legislation dealt by a supreme authority is perhaps one of the most effective ways to induce action against issues such as upland erosion in the Mournes. Finally, like so many other environmental issues, it's quite clear that there is no easy solution to upland erosion in the Mournes. Dedicating policy, management plans, and hands-on projects to this issue as it becomes clear that with every issue addressed, another becomes apparent. The issue of